Okay, guys. I guess we're gonna try to do this again. My computer crashed and I cannot get it reloaded. So I'm gonna set this back up and we're gonna try to finish it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer chats because I had a convoluted setup. Give me a minute here and I will try to restart my computer and YouTube, but there's a very distinct possibility that I will not be able to be chatting. Let's see. Sorry, best laid plans. I guess YouTube is under a lot of strain, and this is just kind of what happens. So bear with me here. I'm going to be trying to set this up. If it works, it works. If not, not. Oh, well, at least the feed quality is better. Hey, well, something there. Let's try something. Let's see if I can just join my own chat. Okay. Well, this is not going to be perfect, but I have it on my phone, and okay. See, look, I've got my phone, I've got my other phone and camera, so I'm going to try to figure this out. Best laid plans, right? Yeah, so these chats on my phone are just going so fast. Let me see if I can. No, I can't. Bear with me. Sorry, guys. I know this is exactly what you wanted in the live stream. Now you guys are all well imbibed. Let's see here. Top chat. Okay. Well, we will make do with what we have, and I will buy a new camera system or something. I'm just trying to restart my computer here to see if I can. Okay, that's a hot mess. So on to forgeries. Forgeries. Yeah, so I was saying, there are very few people who have nefarious or ulterior motives when it comes to forgeries, and most of the time they're just as shocked and dismayed as you would expect to find that the painting that they had just purchased or the painting that they've owned for a long time is not what it was purported to be. And it's a delicate situation because I have a responsibility to my clients to let them know that what they have is not an authentic painting. It is an authentic painting, but it's not by the artist. But I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, and it's a tough conversation to have. Now, I don't really have any legal responsibility to report forgeries, and there isn't a forgery database. You can contact the FBI and they'll tell you that they have bigger fish to fry. You can contact Interpol and they'll do the same thing. There's the Stolen Art Registry, but that's for stolen art, not really forgeries. There's ICANN, which they might, if it's a big enough deal, address it. But ultimately, there's not really much you can do except try to tell the client and educate them about the potentials that they have going forward. Now, I have come across situations where there have been nefarious actors, and that is a little bit trickier. Usually, you can tell that something isn't right with the client or the piece right off the bat. And usually you try to steer clear of those situations, and nobody wants to get themselves into a situation where they're dealing with a dishonest actor or somebody who's trying to swindle anybody. But sometimes it happens, and the best thing that you can do is try to be open and honest and clear about your ethical guidelines and boundaries that you won't cross, and make that clear to the client in language that hopefully they will pick up on and understand that you are not interested in being part of the situation. The audio is worse now. Yeah, well, I don't know what to tell you guys. Let's see. I am trying my best to figure out how to fix all of the technical issues that I've had. I'm trying to do it on the fly while I'm also trying to work on this painting. So I understand that the audio is pretty lousy. You guys do not need to repeat that to me. It does not help the situation. I'm frustrated by the crash of my computer and what's happening right now. And so I would appreciate just a little bit of understanding and patience. Otherwise, I can just shut it down and try it another day. These things happen. Sorry. Give me a second here. I'm going to try. Is the mic better now? Yeah, so the problem is that I'm using my phone to stream this because my computer crashed. And my phone is about a good 4 feet above where I am. So you guys either get me standing up here and I can't reach the painting, or I don't know what to tell you. So I will talk louder, but there's not much I can do. Seriously, stop complaining about the microphone. All right, there's nothing I can do about the microphone. There is nothing I can do about the quality of the video. I am just operating with a broken system here, and that's just kind of it. So I will try to continue fixing my computer to get it back up and running. But until that time, I'm turning off my other phone so I can't see the chats because I can't read them, they're coming too fast. And I cannot tell you guys enough that I have no control over the quality of the audio at this point. So I'm sorry that I'm not able to answer any of your questions right now. I'm just going to go ahead and talk, and you guys can listen or not. So, fake paintings. I have come across paintings where there have been signatures added atop of paintings that were good paintings but not valuable, and so the signature was added. The old signature was covered, and a new signature was added to make it a more valuable painting. And in those cases, I tell my client that the only honest and ethical thing to do is to remove the fraudulent signature. And sometimes the clients say, "Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, I don't want to have a fake painting, something that's gonna hang in my house, and I'm gonna have to, look at it and be embarrassed about it." I have other clients who say, "No, you must leave it, blah, blah." And, ultimately I work for my clients. There's not much that I can do if they say don't. I will make notes. I will document it to the best of my ability so that if ever there's a question, I have proof that it's a fraudulent signature, or, the painting isn't what it was purported to be. But, again, I have to do what my clients wish. Guys, hold on one second. Pick what up?
I'm looking for you again?
Yeah?
You are?
Yeah.
I can't pick up a piece of art
For who?
for Hillary Clinton.
You were supposed to come at 2. You're not ready. I told her to tell you to come at 2. They're not ready.
Okay. I'll do it.
Sorry. Seems like all the best laid plans are just going up in smoke. All right, computer is back on. I'm going to try to get this thing back up and running. All right, that's not going to work. So you guys are stuck with lousy sound and better video. So is what it is. And I probably won't be able to answer many chats because they are just coming in too fast. But give me a second and I will try to set something up where I can try to monitor what's going on. Okay. Oops, sorry. Okay, what is the most nefarious thing that I've come across in my time doing conservation? Fake paintings, you don't come across them too often. It's more bad actors. And there was a case where, okay, how do I talk about this delicately? Reputation is a big thing in any business, and in the art world, even more so. And there are times when dealers or galleries or actors within the art world, people who make their business in the art world, can tread on their reputation. And like an oak tree, it takes a long time to grow strong, and one lightning strike can take it down. So when that happens, it is predictable that people will probably not want to work with you if your reputation is sullied. And if you are trying to operate a business and your reputation has been sullied, it would not be uncommon to try to operate through, I guess, like a shell company or, somebody else. And that happened once with a gallery whose reputation had really taken a hit. and they were desperate and trying to, really desperately trying to stay afloat. And so they were trying to operate without their name being involved, because nobody was comfortable dealing with them because of their reputation. And so there was this weird occurrence where paintings just started arriving at the studio, addressed to Baumgartner Fine Art Restoration, with no phone call ahead of time, no heads up, nothing. And at first, my father and I would open them up and we'd think, well, maybe there's a note inside. Maybe somebody just forgot to call us, because that's not totally uncommon. And we wouldn't find any notes, no paperwork, nothing. And so the painting would say, well, I guess they'll call, right? They forgot. In a week or two, they'll realize that they haven't received a proposal, and they'll call us and everything will be sorted out. And, a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, nothing, and we generally kind of forget about it because we're operating our own business and have too many other daily things to worry about, and so we leave them in the storage racks. And then somebody shows up at the studio and says, hi, I'm here to pick up a painting. And it is not terribly uncommon for people to come and pick up paintings who we don't know. There may be shipping services or relatives or friends or agents of record or employees for galleries and dealers and auction houses and that kind of thing. So we generally require written consent, and we'll check with the client. And this is one of those cases where somebody showed up and they said, we're here to pick up a painting and this and that and the other thing. And I said, well, we didn't do any work on this painting. And the the person there to pick it up said, yes, I'm here to pick it up. And after a little bit more investigation, we came to the bottom of the story, and it was the gallery, whose reputation was in the toilet, was sending paintings to us because the seller wouldn't send to them, and they were effectively using us as a front, kind of a shell, because the seller wouldn't sell to them. They were trying to disguise the transaction within our studio. And of course, we put an end to that right away and terminated a relationship with that gallery and never did any work for them ever again. And they went belly up shortly thereafter, not surprisingly, and returned the artworks to the original shipping location and tried to, as best we could, extricate ourselves from a situation that we didn't want to be in, and explain to everybody involved why it was completely bonkers and not okay. So that's one of the more uncomfortable things that has happened. There have been plenty of times where people have asked me, my father, to do things that are unethical. Change signatures, remove signatures, write affidavits stating things that aren't true. And of course, those are just things that are easily dismissed, just patently, prima facie. You just say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not how I run my business. That's not how I want to carry myself in this world. And you try to explain to the clients as best as possible why it is problematic. And sometimes you tell them that, well, ethically, morally, this and that and the other thing. And sometimes they get that, you hope they get that. And then, I've always found that a good way of ending that conversation is by saying, well, insurance fraud is a federal crime. And I'm not sure what my obligation to report it is, but maybe I should make some phone calls and find out. That usually ends the conversation very quickly, and the client understands that I will not be party to that. Anyhow, maybe one day when I'm very old, I'll write a book and, spill all the secrets. I'm trying to talk as loud as I can. It is echoey in here, and I don't want to have a hoarse voice. Funny story. This is where I keep my water. You notice that there's a big metal thing with a lid and a straw. Learned my lesson the hard way about not having a lid and a straw on your water. You learn very quickly to identify what is consumable and what is not from each other when you grab a cup full of acetone and you put it into your mouth. Lesson learned. So now my water stays in a big metal canister with a straw that is distinct from where my solvents are. Let's see. I didn't drink the acetone. I spit it out really quickly, just for the record. Once it hit my lips, I knew it was something. And I think probably once I smelled it, but the action of drinking was too fast. It just boom went all out on the floor. So that was it was a hard lesson learned. Have I ever discovered a master? Yeah, I have. I have been part of some really fun things. We were just talking about the really lousy part of this business, you know, the fraud, the cheating, the lying, the stealing. And I kind of don't really want to get into that too much because it's really tricky to talk about that stuff without getting too detailed. And it's also, this is not pleasant, and I'd like to think about more pleasant things right now. So I was working, a client brought me a painting, and she had some suspicions about it, or some insights into the painting. She thought it might be by a particular artist, by George Caleb Bingham, who was a Hudson River School painter. Actually, really well-known, really desired Hudson River School painter. But it was unsigned, and she had no provenance, and there was nothing she could do about it. And yeah, I know I need moderators. We'll set that up at some point later. And this is the second time I'm doing this. Obviously, I'm learning as I'm going along. If this is something that I decide to continue doing, more live chats, then I will invest in better equipment and get some moderators and a big band hammer, I guess. But for now, I don't know, guys. This is what it is. Anyhow, she brought the painting in and she expressed her ideas to me, and she said, well, what can we do? You know, how can we figure this out? And I said, well, let's contact the George Caleb Bingham expert. He wrote the catalog resume, he keeps a database, and let's see what he has to say. And so we reached out to the expert, the person who wrote the book, and he said, well, you know, there's a lot of fake George Caleb Binghams out there, there's a lot of things that look like Bingham, you know, so I don't know. My guess is that it's probably not authentic, but send me the photos. So we took some photos and we sent high resolution photos to him. And he said, no, this is interesting. It's certainly a good painting, but I just don't yet know if it's Bingham. And so through a lot of talking and negotiating, I was able to get him to send me digital copies of Bingham's sketchbooks, which I was hoping I would be able to go through with the client and we would find some things that would be indicative of it being a true Bingham. Unfortunately, you know, we didn't find anything right off the bat, but the painting had a weird appearance to it. And by weird appearance, I mean that it was a horizontal painting of the Hudson River. And if you looked at the painting and kind of rotated it into portrait mode, you could see that in some parts of the painting where the artist had painted the whites, where it was thinly painted, you could start to see that there was a pedimenti underneath. It's pedimenti. It's Italian for underpainting. And the underpainting, sorry guys, they will not be ready until 2 p.m. No, I am not available right now.
So what do you want me to say to her?
You can tell her that right now I am unavailable, that when I'm available, I'll give her a call back, but the paintings will be ready afternoon, closer towards 2, like we had communicated.
Good.
Tell her I'm sorry, but I am engaged in something and it's a priority right now. Okay. So I got the sketchbooks and I was looking at the painting and I noticed that there was some underpainting, a pedimenti, that was kind of visible. And as I started to look at it, I started to make out that it looked like it was a portrait of a soldier. Unfinished portrait, but I could see the coat and the shape of the soldier's body. And so I started thinking, well, if there's no sketch of the Hudson River painting, maybe there's a sketch of this soldier. Maybe this was a portrait that he had started and then didn't finish and then reused the canvas like artists do and painted the Hudson River. And so I took a look through hundreds and hundreds of pages of sketchbooks and I isolated all of the portraits of soldiers. And then I took some X-ray photographs and infrared photographs of the painting to get a clearer image of the portrait. And I took them into Photoshop and I started overlaying them to see if any of them matched up and scrolling through. And wouldn't you know it, one of the sketches in George Caleb Bingham's sketchbook aligned almost perfectly with the painting. I mean, almost perfectly. And so I took all that information and I put it together in a little dossier or report for the client and for the author of the catalog resume. I submitted it to him, and he was a really lovely guy, really wonderful, really cooperative, really helpful, and really excited and engaging. And so I showed him all of this stuff, and he said, well, without a doubt, that is a George Caleb Bingham. That sketch is unique to his sketchbook, and that he had painted it and then repainted it. Nobody else would have been able to do that except him. It is going in the catalog resume. Thank you, awesome, fantastic, boom. So that was one time. That was really fun. That was really exciting. And it was really uplifting and kind of, makes you feel really good. You kind of walk on cloud nine for a couple of days afterwards because you did, something great. And everybody won. Let's see. Where are my clients from? All over the world. All over the world. I have a client here from Australia. I have one from Spain. I have one from Greece. Pretty much wherever. Let's see. Yeah, you can start to see the sky. Just look at the difference between here and here. These purples, these lavenders, these little touches of turquoise. It's not maybe necessarily an incredibly dramatic difference, but it makes a difference. And when you start to see a painting come clean, and you start to see all of what the artist wanted you to see, it makes a big difference. The highlights get lighter because they're less dirty. And by contrast, the dark areas start to appear darker because the highlights are brighter. And so what you get is a sense of depth returning back to the painting. And you get a true sense of the colors. And that matters tons because colors have temperature. Many of you may know this, many of you may not, that warm colors generally move to the front of the spatial plane, and cool colors recede backwards. And so getting the colors clean and revealing what they actually are, you can start to get more depth. Because if a warm color is really dingy, it's not going to appear as bright or warm or full and rich as it would otherwise. And once you get it clean, once it gets fully all that grime and surface grime and varnish off, and you can see it, then you can start to get that sense that this is a foreground color or a highlight, or that this is a shadow, that this should fall backward into space. And you may not consciously think of it, but your eye and your brain process that. And that's what makes the painting come alive in the depth. So that purple looks different than that purple, even though they're the same. Was there a question about yelling or something? I try not to yell. What parts of the painting have had the varnish removed? I think kind of this area, and then down in here, not yet this section here, so I'm working on this section here. And we'll get to see, well, let's see what's under here. Oh, my chat just disconnected, because of course, everything is on fire. There's something very ironic about my computer failing, but my iPhone totally operating fine and perfectly. It's very something. I guess my computer just hates me today. All right, sorry, I have my phone here. You can see it. I'm gonna try to keep an eye on the chats while they're going by at warp speed. Let's see if I can. Okay. Are my clients primarily art galleries, private collectors, mix of both? So I will work for anybody with art. I'm agnostic on that. I have activated slow mode, guys. I don't know. So just, if you have questions that you would like to ask, post those. Don't tell me that the audio stinks or that the video is choppy or that I should do this or I should do that, because it's not helpful, because I can't do anything about it right now. And it takes my attention away from questions that you or other people may be asking that will be more interesting to hear me talk about. If you would like to hear me talk about my computer and phone issues and Wi-Fi issues, I will talk about that, but I don't think that's what you guys want to hear. So maybe let's refrain from making that the topic of discussion. So, I will work for just about anybody that has a painting. I don't care if you are a billion-dollar collector or if you are somebody who went to a flea market. I'm an equal opportunity business person. But I do work with a lot of dealers and galleries across the country. I do a lot of work with collectors, both big and small, wealthy and modest. I work with organizations, foundations, historical societies, libraries, civic organizations, corporations, both big and small. I work with other businesses within the arts, framers, dealers, galleries, interior designers, consultancy groups, and of course I work with some small museums, some large museums. Large museums generally have their own conservation staffs, and so it will be a rare occurrence when they bring somebody private in, and that usually happens because there is a specific need for that person, or because somebody specifically wants that person involved in the project. So I will work with museums when I am asked to. It's not, let me put it delicately, it is always an interesting experience. Private conservators and museums have very different business models. Museums don't really have the same business model that private conservators do, and so there can sometimes be, I don't want to say miscommunications, but we kind of speak different versions of the same language. And, you know, it just can make the relationship, you know, I don't know. Do I make frames? I don't make frames. I will do some frame conservation, if it is minor or limited. I like to send that out to other people that have more experience or are better suited to that, but, you know, you do what you can. If I have clients internationally, how do I get the pieces back to them or to and from the studio? Well, we ship them. And they can be shipped either by dedicated art facilitation companies that handle the logistics across the globe for artwork transportations. And they may deliver it by hand, they may have a truck, they may, whatever. But most of my clients, believe it or not, send things via FedEx, UPS, and DHL. Really, they move more packages than anybody else on the planet, and they know how to move packages safely and effectively. And if you pack a painting well, then it can travel in just about any method and arrive safe and sound. So it's really an issue of packing, not transportation. And some clients do a really good job, and some do not. I mean, it is what it is. You just deal with it as it comes. Favorite so I'm reading one of these questions. I think for how do I handle the stress of my work commitments? Well, how does anybody handle the stress of work commitments, right? I mean, we have to balance our commitments to our clients, our responsibilities to do the best work we can, our responsibilities to our families and friends to be good people. You just try your best. There's no magic answer to any of that. I will say that what I have found as I've been doing this for a long time, and other things in life, is that just communication is so absolutely important. You guys just saw or heard a clear example of miscommunication when I was talking to the person who came into the studio. I communicated that I would not be available until 2 and that the pickup could not happen until then, and apparently that wasn't received or something like that, and so now there's an issue and a miscommunication that really could have been solved before we got to this point, and I suspect that I'm going to have a bunch of angry messages on my phone, and I'll have to deal with that. Let's see. Favorite conservation, favorite restoration. The next one. Truth be told, I like most of them that I have to do. Obviously, working on a painting that's beautiful, or at least a painting that I consider beautiful, or one that I enjoy looking at, is much more enjoyable than a painting that I'm not visually interested in. But for me, the paintings that are really exciting are the ones that are really damaged, the ones that require a lot of conservation, the ones that require new methods or techniques or approaches, things where it gets me thinking, things where I'm lying in bed at night and my mind is racing, thinking of this new thing I'm going to do, or this piece of equipment I have to build, or something that I have to step my game up. Those are obviously the most exciting conservations that I get to do, because they're engaging and they're rewarding and they make me feel kind of electric. And it just so happens for you, the viewers, I have 2 projects that I am working on that really kind of fall right into that. I have one that was just a tremendous amount of work on a really stunning painting, and I'm wrapping up the editing on that, and then I'm in the process of working on one that is, without a doubt, one of the more complicated and interesting conservations that I've ever had to do, and has required of me things so far, and I'm not even done with it, that I did not know I was going to need to do, and wasn't quite sure how to solve them. If I could pick one painting to work on in the world, I don't know. That's a hard one. I'll think about that. Burn paintings. Yeah, so burn paintings are really tricky. If a painting is exposed to a fire, the heat can cause extreme damage to the painting. Obviously, you know that, right? But what happens, even if the painting isn't on fire, the heat can soften the paint, and then when it's soft, all of the smoke can kind of attach itself to the softened paint, kind of like powder coating or enamel, and then it gets baked on. And then when the paint cools, that soot is now part of the surface of the painting. In addition, the paint can bubble, it can blister, it can, like a marshmallow, it can burn, and there's not really much that can be done at that point. I've had clients come in with paintings where sections have caught on fire or where they've been toasted like a marshmallow, and I try to tell them, honestly, there is nothing left here for me to work with. I'm not sure what the expectation is. And we talk about it, and I say, look, we might be able to salvage part of the painting, the part that isn't damaged, but the part that was on fire, that's donezo. You can't unburn a painting. So those are really tricky, but usually there's something that can be done. Usually there is some treatment or some approach whereby we can get the piece to a state where the client can live with things. We're not, I don't know. Podcasts that I listen to, I'm listening to many right now. I listen to This American Life quite a bit, The Moth, Radio Hour, Third Coast International Audio Festival, shout out to them, because they have awesome audio stories. What else? Most of the time when I'm in the studio, I'm listening to music or National Public Radio, or really lately nothing at all, because I just like working in silence. It's kind of meditative and very tranquil. What do I think of modern digital art? I think that if it is interesting and can move me or affect within me an emotion, I think it's really awesome. If it doesn't do that, it's not, meh. If I've ever had to turn away a piece because the damage was so extensive. Like I said, I try to always see if there's something that can be done, right? If the piece is just so damaged that I'm concerned that I won't be able to affect a positive change on it, or that more often the case is that the client has unrealistic expectations, and they'll bring in a painting that's been burned or covered in mold, or has been sitting underwater for 20 years or something, I don't know, whatever. And they expect me to turn it back into a glorious masterpiece. If the client is unrealistic or unwilling to accept what I can do or what I tell them, then I may have to not work with that client, because I don't want to end up in a lousy situation. Yeah, I know, echo. Sorry, guys and gals. But, like I said about communication, if I can talk to the client and I can explain the situation and I can tell them how and what I can do, and we are in accord, and we both understand each other, I understand their wants and needs, they understand the limitations that the painting is presenting, and they understand the scope of the work that I can execute, then usually there is something that can be done. And usually we can salvage the piece and move forward with the relationship. More often I fire clients than I fire paintings. Yeah, have I ever liked the painting so much that I would have bought it if I could? Yeah, that happens. There have definitely been a couple paintings that have come in the studio that I just felt madly in love with. And, the one benefit of being the person who's working on them is that I can tell my client, it's going to take another week, because I just want to really make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's dotted and blah, blah, blah. And I tell him, you know, honestly, I just want to spend some more time with this painting. It's really gorgeous. And to be, you know, to a T, they've all been completely flattered, and nobody has ever said anything about that. Obviously, I'm not like holding their paintings hostage, but you know, if there's a painting that I'm working on that is just is something that really captivates me, you know, maybe I'll slow down and work on it a little bit slower so I can spend more time with it. And you know, my clients understand that. They get to live with these paintings forever, and I get to see them briefly. And so they are usually flattered and say, take as much time as you want. We love the painting too. I have seen some paintings that I've loved that have been owned by galleries and dealers, and I've said, hey, you got a big outstanding invoice over here, and I like this painting. Usually doesn't work out in my favor though. Usually the values of the paintings they're selling exceed the cost of conservation. But you know, it never hurts trying. Does this piece need retouching? No, I haven't seen any areas where there's paint loss or that look like it needs retouching. So I don't think this piece needs any. I mean, I'll go over it with a fine-tooth comb once I get it fully cleaned, but it doesn't look like it has any real damage to it. So that's a good thing. Favorite painters? Oh, 99% Invisible is a great podcast also. I used to listen to them. You know, when I used to have to commute an hour and a half each way, I listened to a lot of podcasts, but my studio now is a 10-minute drive from home, so, you know, by the time I start the podcast, I'm kind of already at work. So, you know, plus and minus, right? Kitsch. Somebody was asked a question about kitsch. Oof, that is tough. I don't know. I mean, I made a post, I made a comment on let's start that over. I left a response to a comment on an Instagram post from a couple days ago where somebody was, had some choice words for the Ida Kohlmeyer sculpture that I put up and was conservative. Sidebar, man, you guys did not like that sculpture. I was surprised. But anyway, the poster said, and this was indicative of lots of the comments, that that's not art, my child could do it, a third grader could do it, and blah, 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 blah. So, A, your child could not do it, would not do it, and did not do it. Okay? Your child did not think to create that sculpture. Your child does not have the technical ability to execute the creation of that sculpture. And your child just didn't do it. So no, your child couldn't. So let's make that absolutely clear. Your child also didn't have the idea to do it. Maybe I already said that. So no, it's not like your 6-year-old could do it. Now, you may not like it. It may not be your cup of tea. And that's perfectly okay. We all don't have to like everything. You know, there are many different types of music out there, and you don't have to like them all. There are many types of food out there, and you don't have to like them all. There are many different types of clothing out there, and you do not have to like them all. But to determine that because you don't like it, or because you don't understand it, that it is a failure, well, that's kind of a cop-out. It is a lot easier to criticize a piece of artwork and call it a failure as compensation for your own inability or one's own inability to understand what's going on with the work. And that's where a lot of modern and contemporary art exists. And that may be a failure of the artists for making art for people in the know or for, you know, the art crowd, but that one doesn't understand the piece does not make it a failure, and rushing to criticize it does nothing but reveal something missing or lacking in one's own understanding of art. Anyway, kitsch. Kitsch is tricky. Kitsch, I guess, is something that is saccharine or devoid of intellectual pursuit or seriousness. But I don't know. I mean, I think kitsch is one of those words that the high art crowd likes to toss around as a smart word to condemn things that they don't think are smart. I mean, here's a case in point. You guys know Thomas Kincaid, or hey, Bob Ross. We know him, right? Well, for years, the art world said that Bob Ross was kitsch, was schlock. He was painting these things on TV. They weren't intellectually curious. They weren't political. They had no serious intent. Well, I think just recently there was a museum that included a series of Bob Ross paintings in an exhibition. And they decided, rightly or wrongly, who knows, that these were not kitsch, that these were not disposable, dismissible pieces of work, that he was doing something deliberately and with an intellectual pursuit that elevates them to the level of high art. Now, we want to talk about success. Thomas Kincaid, who made a name for himself with giclée prints, which are just kind of like inkjet prints on canvas, and then they'd be sold in malls and in little stores around the country, and you'd have a craftsman would add highlights and embellish the painting with real paint. And the high art world said, well, that's just, bleh, whatever. Well, when Thomas Kincaid died, I think he was a multi-millionaire. He owned like 4 houses, boats. He lived a life of complete luxury. When Bob Ross died, he was filthy rich as well. Now, I'm not saying that making money is the determination of what makes you a good artist, but look, let's all be honest here. We only get one life, and we would all like to enjoy that life as much as we could. And it may be sad to say, but one of the ways that we can enjoy that life is if we can have the means to do the things that bring us enjoyment. Now, if that's golfing, you'd love to, go play at Augusta with the finest clubs. If it's surfing, I'm sure that you'd love to spend a month off the coast of Hawaii or New Zealand or something. If it's mountaineering, you want to go to Everest, right? Well, all those things cost a lot of money, and so having a lot of money allows you to enjoy your life while you are here. And so, to some degree, Thomas Kincaid and Bob Ross won, because there are plenty of really great artists making really smart intellectual art who have 4 jobs and no health insurance and struggle on a daily basis, and maybe they're happy, maybe they're not. I don't know. I'm talking about things that I don't know enough about. Have I ever discovered interesting details on paintings? Yeah, all the time. So paintings are these really weird things that owners feel that because they own them, and they can do with them as they please, right? So I have seen paintings. I had a painting of a lovely young girl come into the studio, and she had this really big bouffant hairstyle, which didn't quite fit the rest of her dress and the age of the painting, but who knows? People do weird things. And so in starting to clean it and starting to remove the old surface grime and the varnish, I discovered that that bouffant was covering up a nun's habit. She had the habit, and she had the crucifix and all of the trappings. And this was not a portrait of a young girl, this was a portrait of a nun. And then at some point, somebody really liked the painting. It was beautifully rendered, beautiful face, but didn't quite want the religious connotations to it. So they had somebody paint over the habit, right? So take off all the overpaint, and you find that it's this beautiful portrait of a nun and this habit. And of course, I told the owner, I said, there's this, that, and the other thing, and we'll remove it, da, da, da. And the owner said, yes, of course, we don't want anything unoriginal on the painting. We want the artist's true vision. And I thought, awesome, you were listening to me. You get it. Well, and then she gets the painting back and says, it's just so religious. And I said, well, she's a nun. What do you expect? So things like that happen all the time. There was a picture on my Instagram where it was like a scene of park and all these people cavorting in the park, and one of the figures was laying down on the ground, and the lower half of his body had been repainted so that he didn't look so awkward. That kind of stuff happens all the time, and it's always neat and novel to remove it and to see what was there originally, what should have been there. Let's see. How I usually communicate with clients? I'll communicate with clients any which way that they prefer. Some clients like lots of phone calls, some clients are emails. I don't do text because that's not how you run a business, how I run a business. But, I'll do video chats. Whatever will make the client feel comfortable and allow them to have the most enriching and engaging experience, I will usually acquiesce and accommodate. I guess when it comes to art, when I was in art school, I had these very firm and almost militant thoughts about art because I was young and I was stupid and I was in art school and I thought I knew things and I knew nothing. Who knows anything when they're 18? Who knows anything when they're 20, 25, 30? Who knows? You only know things, I think, like, the moment before you die. And that's just the deal we make as humans. So I have these really firm thoughts about what made art, and I would use my education to back that up and try to be smart. And ultimately, as I've worked on thousands of paintings and seen so many different types of artwork, and also seen what art can do to people, I just kind of let go of that because it's so uninteresting and it's so boring and predictable. And live and let live, right? If somebody has a painting that I think is met, but it brings them to tears, who am I to judge that that's not good art? Look, the worst art is art that is dismissible, that you don't have to reckon with. The art that you look at and you go, no, right? I don't have any opinion about it whatsoever. Because the opposite of love is not hate, it's apathy, right? So the response that I left to that commenter on the Ida Kohlmeyer sculpture was something along the lines of, one way that we judge the efficacy or success of a piece of art is whether it affects within you, the viewer, an emotion. Something inside of you shifts or changes. And that could be your head, your heart, your stomach, whatever. And that this commenter took the time out of their day to stop, to write a comment, to use some very colorful language, and to really get worked up about it. Ida won, right? She won that because she changed that commenter's day. She changed that commenter's perspective. She got in that commenter's head or heart, or, she owned that commenter, that viewer. So, if you get angry at a piece of artwork, or you get sad at a piece of artwork, or 3 days later you're still thinking about a piece of artwork, you do not get a choice but to give respect to that artwork and that artist for getting inside your head, getting inside your heart, and setting up camp and making you reckon with it. So, Ida won because there were 15,000 commenters on that video talking about that sculpture. So, kudos to Ida. Well, I mean, this painting is not necessarily making, and this painting right here is not necessarily making any political statements or intellectual moves or anything like that. But, there are two parts to every human. There is an intellectual and an emotional. Well, there's more parts than that, but this painting is not seeking to make you question the foundations of reality or whether or not the socioeconomic imbalance in our current country today is deliberate or accidental or whatever, any of that. Maybe this painting is trying to take away 5 minutes of your life and put you into a different space. Maybe this is a painting of escapism. Maybe it's that song that you put on in your car that you'd be embarrassed to play at a party, but sends you somewhere, transforms your moment. And I don't know. I mean, look, we love who we love, and if we're smart and we're mature, we get over who we love, and we just love them, right? You get over the fact that the person you love doesn't look a certain way, doesn't, isn't from a certain family, doesn't have a certain education, and you love them because they change you. They rile something up inside of you. And, if you're smart, you get over them and you live a long, happy life and you revel in that love. I don't see why it's any different with art, with music, with food, with fashion. There's just too much judging of what other people like and do. Okay, I'm definitely gonna stop talking about that stuff. I don't work on watercolors. I don't work on works on paper. I don't have apprentices or employees right now because I don't need them, number one, and I feel pretty strongly right now that it's important that, how would I say this? When you go to the doctor for a procedure, you want the surgeon working on you. You don't want the medical student. And it's not to say that the medical student won't be good or isn't good, but when I get cut open, I'd like to know that the surgeon's there. And so I know my clients like to know that I am the one who works on their paintings. I answer the phone, I write the invoices, I package things. There's a complete and total accountability. That if they're not happy, there's no, let me get back to you, let me find out who did what, or, well, I didn't do it, and blaming somebody. That doesn't exist in my studio. And that's the model that I learned from my father, that you take somebody's trust, you have to be fully accountable. And that is not to say that larger studios or businesses cannot be accountable or that don't run that way. And I'm not trying to make that assertion. What I am saying is that it is impossible for me to do that because there is nobody else here to blame. There's no interns, there's no students, and all that kind of stuff. Is lockdown making it harder for me to come by supplies and work? I have a pretty big stockpile of stuff. I mean, I buy mostly in bulk because it's more economical, and honestly, because if I don't, I usually forget, and then all of a sudden I'm without something. So, when I buy nitrile gloves, I buy 10,000 at a time so that my cabinets are just filled with them. When I buy cotton swabs, I buy 10,000 at a time, or cotton balls, so that I have them in stock. So I have a pretty big stock here. I'm well equipped to go forward, but it has definitely affected my ability to work. I've had projects put on hold. I've had some suppliers have to shut down completely, and then that's left me, the ripple effect. If the lumber producer can't work, then the stretcher maker can't work, then I can't get the stretcher, then it is what it is. But, thus far, everybody's been very understanding because what are you going to do? Why are exceptional talents like Maxfield Parrish relegated to the world illustrator? Same thing with Norman Rockwell, right? Because I will tell you this much, Mucha, Rockwell, Maxfield Parrish, you go try to buy one of those at auction and you'd be surprised at how expensive they are. So I think there's a big disconnect with what the high art set crowd thinks is art and what people who buy art value. Again, don't listen to anybody else. You have a voice inside your head, only listen to that. Unless it's your mom or your grandma, then definitely listen to them. Hardest conservation that I've ever completed to date. I think I mentioned this once before, maybe in a video or a live stream or something. It was a paint film transfer, so this is a painting on canvas. And the way canvas is prepared is that you have the canvas and then the canvas gets sized, usually with rabbit skin glue. And then on top of that you get a ground, not gesso. It's a big misconception. Gesso goes on panels, ground goes on canvases. Ground is flexible, gesso is rigid. So there's a ground that goes on the rabbit skin glue, and then the painting is painted on with oil paint. And this painting, I won't get into the long-winded details of it, but the paint had detached, the ground layer was detaching from the painting because of poor preparation and poor care. And the canvas was extremely deteriorated, had water damage to it, and the canvas had effectively rotted. It was just there was nothing that could be done to salvage it. And so the paint layer and the ground layer had to be removed and transferred onto a new canvas. And that was probably the hardest, maybe not the hardest, but definitely the most intense conservation I've ever done. I had done a couple of those with my father, so I knew what to do, but this one I did by myself after he passed away. And you know, it's like if you've ever flown a plane, the first time the instructor says it's all yours, yeah, that's a pretty intense moment where even though you know what to do, ooh boy, you've got no net, and it can get really intense. Ida Kohlmeyer is dead. Let's see. So who does my videos? I do. I film them with tripods and multiple cameras, and then I edit them myself. And that's why I leave mistakes in, like the last video, my little stuttering, and that's why sometimes the audio is a little off or the color balance is wonky, because I am not a video producer. I'm a conservator, and I am just trying my best. Have I ever had terrible experiences with clients? Yeah, of course. I mean, you know, it doesn't matter what business you're in, you definitely run into situations where things go sideways or, you know, the client doesn't understand. But let me say this much. It is not necessarily because the client is bad or terrible or something. It just usually comes down to miscommunications or expectations that are not aligned. And so to some degree, those are everybody's responsibility. Mine, the clients, you know, we all are responsible for making the relationship go forward and be successful and helpful. Okay, let's see. Whose work have I always wanted to conserve? Ooh, well, a couple of years ago, I got really, really lucky, and then I got to work on a little John Singer Sargent painting. And he is an artist who I've been admiring since I knew who he was. That was a really, really fun project, and I was really fortunate and grateful to get to work on that painting. I would love to work on a Robert Rauschenberg or a Jasper Johns or a Robert Motherwell, just because I think those would be really interesting technically to work on because of their the way that they made their art. Let's see. How do I feel about separating the art from the artist? Ooh, that is a big question. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. Boy, maybe I'll ask you some questions to think about. Do you listen to Michael Jackson's music? How about R. Kelly? How about David Bowie? Do you watch Woody Allen's films? How about Roman Polanski's films? Do you listen to what Bill Clinton has to say? Do you listen to what Donald Trump has to say? How we separate an individual's product from their actions, I don't know what the answer is to that. All I know is it is very complicated and very confusing, and it is one where there is no perfect solution. And so my only thought is that we have to try to do a lot of listening to the parties involved and try to understand why people have very strong held beliefs, and then maybe reflect on that. So I don't know. Yeah, for those of you chiming in late, I had a camera set up running through my computer, and it crashed, and I couldn't get it working again. And so now I'm just running it through my phone, and this is just kind of the best that we have in the moment. I apologize for the low audio quality. I'm also trying to be as loud as I can without wrecking my voice. Next time, it'll be better. That's all I can say. I'm in Chicago. How many conservations do I film? Not many. It usually takes about a month to film and edit and get everything squared away. I try to have projects going on at the same time, multiples overlapping. But the filming process really slows down the conservation process. I'd say it maybe doubles the amount of time it takes to do it, but usually my clients don't seem to mind. I always check with them first and see if it's something that they are okay with or that they're interested in doing. I'm gonna step away here for just a hot second. I gotta go set something up. I'm gonna still try to answer questions. How does conservation affect the value of a painting? Well, good conservation can restore the value, can preserve its value. Bad conservation or bad work can be detrimental and can have a negative impact on it. What makes good conservation versus bad conservation? Well, choice of materials, using archival materials, materials that won't deteriorate, materials that are reversible, that are safe for the painting, and then ethos, like how, being conservative. And that sounds funny, being a conservator and being conservative, but not being overly aggressive with the retouching, not doing things that are inappropriate to the painting, respecting the artist's original intent, trying to, preserve the painting so that it lasts beyond one's own time with it. Those are all things that go into determining the success of any conservation. Let's see. Do I need permission to film from clients? Yeah, I have a contract and there's all sorts of that stuff. I learned editing by trial and error, just doing it. How many cotton swabs do I use? Lots. Here, let's see. That's what I've used so far. It's not actually that many. Yeah, the painting does look much brighter. I'll put a picture up of a before and after at some point, maybe on my Instagram or as the thumbnail for the video once I'm done with it. Yeah, my kid is here. He is in my office trying to do a Zoom with his classmates because he hasn't seen them in forever, which is heartbreaking. Which is what I gotta step out and go and get it set up. So give me one more second. I gotta just make sure that it's all squared away because he's been really looking forward to it. Hold on. Miles, where are you? Do I have more work because of my YouTube and my Instagram? Oh yeah, obviously. There's a ton more people inquiring. I have a lot more work. I have a lot more inquiries that are just not productive. But it is what it is. I don't mind it. I will always return emails or try my best. Some people don't necessarily understand that every morning I wake up and there's 100 plus emails in my box and I have to figure out which ones I need to address in the moment, which ones I can put off for a little bit later, and which ones are just not worth responding to. And if any of you are trying to email me and I don't get to you, there's just a good chance that I just got email exhaustion and I had to take a step back from it. So, I don't know. Okay, so here's actually a good question. I put an isolation varnish on before retouching so that I get a better sense of the way that the painting will look after the final varnish is put on. Then I do my retouching according to that. And the question is, won't my retouching change once the final varnish is put on? Yeah. Yeah.
I can't hear anybody.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta go fix the Zoom thing. Hold on one second. You gotta put headphones on.
Yeah.
All right, the Zoom is working. Something is working. You're probably gonna hear my kid yelling in the background. So, you know, that. So yeah, I put the isolation varnish on so I can get a better idea of what the painting is gonna look like once the final varnish goes on. And the final varnish will go atop of, excuse me, will go atop of my retouching. And yeah, that's one of the hard things, that it can potentially change the color. But when my retouching pigments are wet and I apply them to the painting, that's what they'll look like with the final varnish on. So I have a good, you know, maybe 10 seconds where the paint is drying, maybe a little bit longer, and I can get an idea if it's the correct color. Now when it dries, it's going to look lighter than when the final varnish goes on. And one of the things that I've had to train myself and learn is not to go back in to those areas that I've already retouched because they look lighter right now, and make them darker, because when I put the varnish on, they'll get even darker. So it's this kind of weird, this weird way of thinking and operating that is not like regular painting. It's a unique way of thinking. Let's see. Yeah, I know Zoom is terrible. Everything is terrible, guys. Everything is always terrible now. So let's just make the best of everything that we have. Let's see. My paintings seem to be my videos seem to be evolving. I don't know. Like I said, the ASMR things, I enjoy making them, but there's just so much work involved in doing them, because I'm not in a studio, a sound recording studio, and I'm not deliberately making ASMR videos. It just takes so much coordination. You know, the phone can't ring, the hot table can't go on, the air conditioning or heating can't go on, trucks drive by. So it's, you know, technically it just, the production is so much more, and it really slows the work down, and then also the post-production is so much more. I will do them when I can, but I don't know that I'm going to be able to do them as much as I did earlier on. How do I calculate? Do I like hot sauce? Yes, I like hot sauce. Just about all of them. Do I work on modernist or abstract paintings? How are they more different to traditional works? Yeah, I work on all types of paintings. I'll work on modern paintings, contemporary paintings, abstract paintings, any type of painting. Like I said, I don't only take classical narrative paintings. I think there's a misconception that that's all that I do, because that's what most of my videos are. And really the only reason is because they are generally older, and so they have more damage, so they are more interesting from a filming perspective, and the issues that they have are also more photogenic or videogenic, so to speak. There are some paintings that I've had, modern paintings, that have really complicated problems, but they don't translate well to video. They just are not problems that are interesting to see me solve. And so that's why I choose those pieces. Question: what should I look for in a conservator? Ooh. Ooh. What should you look for in any service provider? You should look for somebody that will answer your questions, that will be honest and open with you, that has clear communication about what they are going to do, what they're going to use, how they're going to do it. They should be willing to put this all on paper in detailed manners. There should be accountability. They should value your time as much as you are valuing their experience or expertise. And they should treat you with respect. They should treat your objects with respect. And if anybody tries to dictate to you what's what, then you probably don't want to work with them. If they don't listen to your concerns or address your concerns, you don't want to work with them. That's pretty much what I would give advice for choosing a conservator. You want to spend some time with them, talk to them, see if you like them, see if there's somebody that you will get along with, that if this is going to be a fruitful relationship for both of you. It shouldn't just be you drop something off at a door and then you're told a price and when to pick it up. That's not how, well, I don't know, maybe that is how it works. That's not how I work. So I can only recommend what I would want in a conservator. Are there artists I don't want to work on? I don't know. I haven't come across any yet. There are definitely artists who I think the conservation would be more difficult or more problematic, but that's not to say I wouldn't want to work on them. I like those projects. Yeah, the audio gods don't like us today. Whatever. Have I ever worked on paintings with multiple mediums? Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, absolutely. And it can complicate the process depending on what is needed. You know, like if there's fiber in the painting, like feathers or fabric or stuff like that, it's a different approach to mixed medium piece than if it's just oil paint. If the piece is on something that is unique, like plexiglass, or I had one that was on a pull-down window shade, that makes it a little bit more complex. But one of the really interesting things about conservation is that every day is problem solving. That like being a conservator is at its core about solving problems. And if you don't like solving problems, conservation is not going to be for you, because it's not just a matter of executing techniques and treatments. It's a matter of trying to figure out what the problem is, why it's a problem, and then devising a solution with known materials and approaches, or inventing a solution with new materials and approaches to address those problems within the parameters of the code of ethics that we conservators follow. And so that's what makes it really interesting. And so sometimes, yeah, I get projects in and I roll my eyes and I groan and go, oh, this is going to be a real pain. But then I take a step back and I say, okay, well, what's interesting about this? Oh, I get to try this new material that I've never used before. Or, hey, I have to build a piece of equipment to tackle this. Yeah. Let's see. I need to have a sip of water. How about that? Oh, okay. One of my favorite memories of working with and for my father. I'm going to try to talk about this without getting choked up. Working with and for him. We used to, so here's a funny story. At the old studio, we were on the 7th floor, and next door, across the wall, was an architect. And that architect had been there for a long time. He had known my father, and they had a nice relationship. They'd take breaks in the middle of the day and have coffee. They'd BS with each other. You know, they each worked alone, so they would peek their heads in and see what each other was working on. They weren't friends outside of work, but I guess they were kind of work friends, something like that. Anyway, I remember one time I was working with my father, and I don't know why or what, but we got into an argument, which is not uncommon, because we would get into an argument, I mean, over nothing, over everything. You know, I was young and brash, he was seasoned and reserved. I was his son, he was my father. So many interesting dynamics at play when you work for your family. Anyhow, we got into an argument, and this was one for the ages. We were yelling at each other. We were just screaming and yelling. I mean, really, really going at each other. And the architect came over and he, walked in and he said, "Hey, guys, is everything okay? What's going on in here? What's the story? Guys, easy, relax." I kid you not, my father and I paused, stopped, looked at each other, had this moment of connection, and then we both in unison turned to him and looked at him and said, "You get the heck out of our studio. You don't come in here and start telling us what's what. You don't know what's going on. You don't butt into our business. You need to keep your blah, 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 blah." And years after, and then our argument ended. And we walked away and said, "That darn architect, who does he think he is, coming over here and telling us how to do our stuff? That guy's so nosy. Maybe we should get a doorbell so we can hear him coming. Better yet, let's lock the door." Anyway, then we went back onto the day and we were fine. Years later, after my father passed away, I became friends with him, and he came over. We were shooting the breeze one day, and he said, "I remember this one time when you and your dad were just screaming and yelling at each other. And I could hear it. I was on the phone with a client, and he was asking me what was going on. And he said, and I remember I came in and I asked what was going on, and you two both blew up at me, just chopped my head off." And I said, "I'm so sorry about that. I totally didn't mean to. We were in the midst of it. We were just going at each other." He said, No, I know. And that's why I came in, because I knew that I could shut you guys up and end your stupid argument about toothpicks or whatever it was if I became the common enemy." He said, "You didn't realize that?" I said, "Huh." I mean, I see it now. He said, you realize how many times I butted into your space just to say, "Hey guys, what the heck?" Just to have you guys yell at me and take the heat off of each of you? And I mean, I get even choked up about that and thinking about that. So that was one of the fun. That was one of the fun things. It's very nostalgic, very heartwarming, all that kind of stuff. So I'm getting a package delivery. It's UPS, so I'm not going to yell at him. And then I'm going to come back and wrap it up and talk to you guys a little bit more, and then let you guys go on your way. So, actually, yeah, we're good. Yeah, I mean, I've been cleaning this painting now for, what do we start at? 8:45, 9, 10:45, 11, so it's 2.5 hours, give or take. Some of that because the stream got lousy. This painting is pretty much cleaned. I will probably take a closer look at it under the black light to see if there's any varnish areas that I missed. I'll take a close look at it, literally a close look at it, so that I can see if there's any stuff stuck in the impasto. And if there is, I'll use dental tools to get it out, stuff like that. But by and large, this painting is now cleaned and is ready for me to look for any spots of retouching. I haven't found any yet, and so I'm not sure if there are. Again, I'll look over it closely. And then after that, it's varnish time. So this, I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I hope it's been an interesting stream and video, and my apologies again for the technological issues. I will pledge to all of you that have put up with it that next time I will have a better setup or a better solution. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'll figure it out. Thanks for putting up with all of that stuff. Thanks for joining in today. I hope it's been interesting. If you guys are asleep, then that's good for you. I am going to be having the next, I would say, 2 months of videos or 3 months of videos are going to be some that I am particularly proud of and have been working on for a long time, and am really, really excited to show and share with you guys. So I hope that you will stay tuned for those and be safe. Tell somebody you love them today. Go look at some artwork that makes you feel happy, sad, angry, confused, and lean into that feeling, particularly if it makes you angry or confused. Just take that moment to hold that space and to allow yourself to feel something that you wouldn't otherwise feel. That is when art is at its most successful and can leave a lasting impression on us. So anyhow, it's Friday or maybe it's Saturday where you are. Go have a lovely weekend. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you back on Instagram and YouTube next week. Thanks as always, guys. I really appreciate it, and I love you all. Take care.